My name is Seth Muncie from Disc Golf Strong, and you are listening to the Zen Disc Golf Podcast.
Hello, disc golf friends. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Zen Disc Golf Podcast. I am your host, Patrick McCormick, author of Zen and the Art of Disc Golf, Discs and Zen, and Disc Golf Strategies and Tactics. I got a great show for you all today as I got a chance to sit down and talk to Seth Muncie, creator of Disc Golf Strong. He helps train some of the biggest names in disc golf. He's worked with Ricky Wysocki, Paige Pierce, Eagle McMahon, and many more to help make sure that they're keeping their minds and bodies in top form for competition. Now, in this conversation, we only reached the tip of the iceberg, not only talking about the importance of physical training and mobility in disc golf, but spending a lot of time on disc golf related injuries, their causes, and prevention. And we talked about the mind body connection and how, as athletes, we're a whole organism, not just a combination of parts. And that's why we got to keep this whole organism healthy, both for today and tomorrow. I do have a disc to give away in this episode. I showed you this disc on the last episode. It was sent to me from Midwest Dye Labs, and it is a West Side Tournament plastic harp. Look how beautiful that thing is. You really, if you're just listening in on the podcast on audio, you're going to have to check out the social media, Zen Disc Golf social media, just to see how beautiful this disc is. And if you want to win this disc, all you got to do is subscribe to this channel on YouTube, leave a comment below related to anything that Seth and I talk about, and it could be yours. Now, let's expand our minds and get disc golf strong with Seth Muncie. Seth, thanks for coming on the show. I really was looking forward to this podcast because you were one of the people when I originally thought to bring this podcast back. You were one of the non-pros that I had in the back of my mind, and one of the original people that I contacted to be on the show. I love talking disc golf, obviously. I've got my own show to do it, but I also love fitness. And a lot of people don't know that about me. They may have read it a little bit in the one of the chapters in my last book, The Disc Golf Strategies and Tactics, in which I took a whole chapter to talk about physical training right before one about mental training. But thank you so much for coming on the show, and this is going to be great.
Oh, Pat, I truly appreciate you reaching out and inviting me. It's a true honor and a privilege to be here on your show. I love your book, Zen and the Art of Disc Golf. I've got it on Audible and the hard copy or paperback, really, and I love it. And so it's an honor and a privilege to be here and speak with you and share what I can and hopefully give some value to your listeners.
Well, thanks for listening to the book. Thanks for buying the book. I will let you know that I am in the process. It's a slow process of redoing the audiobook myself. So it'll actually be me reading it. That book that you have on Audible will stay up there, but I think I'm just basically going to redrop the complete Zen Disc Golf. So it'll be me reading it. So hopefully within the next few months, just to let everybody know. But yeah, thanks for the kind words, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Well deserved, well earned.
Thank you. I got this thing started probably around the time that you were starting to get Disc Golf Strong started. I got started in about 2014, started the podcast in 2015, and that's when you really started kind of going in the direction of beginning this Disc Golf Strong. That's my understanding, at least. Can you tell everybody about your business and about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I officially launched Disc Golf Strong to the world in the very beginning of 2016, but it had been something that I've been, thinking about and working on and kind of formulating since really about 2014, 2015 is when I was, kind of going out and talking to fellow club members out at the disc golf course and kind of just thinking of some things and how I can best help, my fellow disc golf athletes. And then, yeah, I launched in 2016 and it's been a great, time since then, sharing the information, being on tour, being able to travel and help disc golfers, both professional and AMs, play strong and healthy and resilient disc golf, try to lower that injury rate, and really play as much as you want and for as long as you want. And before that, I owned a gym for a couple years, and I shut that down so that I could go full time into helping the disc golf community and really growing the sharing the message and growing the message of disc golf strong. Did you want me to get a little bit in my background before that, or
Yeah, sure.
start
And
right there
that,
with
just
just?
let me say, that's a bold move to be having a business. I don't know how it was flowing in that business, but to shut that down and then to go disc golf strong 100%. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that decision making process, but I definitely want to hear about your history. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a risk for sure. But one of my favorite quotes by Joseph Campbell is the cave you fear to enter holds the treasures you seek. And really that just kind of makes me say, like, helps me move forward into that darkness and go like, hey, this I want to share, I want to do it. My wife probably, sometimes doesn't she knows when I come up with ideas and I'm like, I really feel like I should do this. She's at this point, she's like, okay, you're just gonna do it. But that's that whole, I felt like I needed to burn the boats. Are you familiar with that kind of story? It's that, you know
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
burn the
The think
boats.
and
And
grow rich mindset.
yeah, I just got to do it, and if I'm going to do it, then I just have to do it. And you know I was working. I had a great facility, 3,200 square foot training facility I'd had for 4 years, called Iron Republic. And our motto was live life strong. And it was all about not just strength physically, but mentally, in community, in service to others, in our emotional states. So that really helped, kind of the holistic approach of disc golf strong, where I've tried to grow it there holistically, and not just about getting stronger physically, but from that whole holistic standpoint. And uh, I was working 16 hours in my gym, or more. I felt like I was there from 5 a.m. till 10 p.m. I was there, you know, mopping the floors 10 p.m. thinking, okay, what time am I getting home so I can get up at 4 a.m. do it again the next day. And I had my wife and my two daughters, and I thought, you know what, if I'm going to just do it, I might as well just go for it, because as much as this is great, I'm never seeing my family. And so it's not like, there was something with the gym where, it was tied me down to where I was like, absolutely can't leave this gym. And I loved it. I loved my members and I loved that experience. And it was a hard thing to let go of, but I felt like I needed to do that, moving forward. So, but a little bit about my background is, after I graduated high school, I enlisted in the U.S. Coast Guard, and I got stationed in San Francisco. I got very lucky to get stationed at a small boat station there, and it was just I got the luck of the draw, going into to a small boat station. We were a 30-man station, and we were kind of like a fire station slash police station, where we worked 48, 72-hour shifts. I know you're in the fire service yourself, and so, had a great experience there, and kind of just was always in the helping profession right from the get-go, doing the search and rescue and all that there. And that really helped shape a lot of my philosophies on helping others, and and just trying to show up, all the time, in any way we can for others. And so I got out. I thought I was going to be a firefighter, and so I went through the fire academy, intensive fire academy, Santa Rosa Intensive Fire Academy, and work work as an EMT, and got hired down in Orange County, California, where I'm from. And I spent a couple of years on an ambulance, doing that, and also working with Orange County Fire Authority as a reserve, paid call firefighter. Um, that was my life. That's what I thought I was going to be doing. But after, I got out in 2003, but out of the service, and everybody was trying to become a firefighter after 9/11. And so there'd be, 10,000 people show up for 5 jobs. And
Mhm.
so I had a wife and a kid and all that. So I was like, you know what, I love this, but I've got to go another direction. And a friend of mine that he's a worked on the ambulance with me and said, hey, there's a gym. Why don't you try the gym? You like to train, you like to work out. And so I did that and found that as a passion. So I went to college and got my degree um, in kinesiology, exercise science, and was fortunate to work with a professional sports team, hockey team, as their intern strength coach for a little bit there, and that really helped shape kind of my how I train, my philosophy on training athletes and rotational patterns and what to do and what not to do. Because if it wasn't for that experience, I probably would be training my athletes a lot different than I train them now, um, based on that experience at that level.
Okay.
Um, and I can jump into that.
Yeah. How so? What changed your thought process there?
Yeah. So when I showed up as the with my first day with the Ducks, it was the Anaheim Ducks that I was with, and my coach Sean Skane. Very fortunate to learn from him, an amazing strength coach. And I thought I was going to be walking in and seeing them doing the craziest, most intense exercises, working their tail off, just pushing and pushing and pushing, and they weren't doing that. And my strength coach said, Seth, these are professional athletes, not professional exercisers, right? Our number one goal is to do no harm, and our number two goal is to just make sure that they can do what they need to do out on the ice. And that's what we're here for. We're not the show, they're the show, right? We're not here to try to impress them with crazy exercises and this and that. If we have athlete get injured, in the training room, that is not a good thing. These are $1 million athletes. They're worth a lot to their to this team and to themselves. And so our job is to make sure that we are helping equip them with the right things that they need. But rule number one: do no harm.
I love that. Yeah, and of course, in EMS, that's the first rule of thumb as
Abs-
well. And so it's a lot like, that sounds kind of like because I'm a big hockey fan. Well, I should say I
mm-hmm,
am a hockey fan. I'm not the biggest because I couldn't, tell you all kinds of stats and everything, but I do
mm-hmm,
love to watch hockey. And but yeah, I love Miracle, the movie Miracle. And
mm-hmm.
so when you're watching them, doing the skating back and forth across the ice until they're vomiting and everything, that's what that reminds me of. It also reminds me of, because when you were saying we can't do that sort of thing, these guys got to go out and play. The
Mm-hmm.
movie is not reality. Kind of like when you watch movies, as you well know, when you watch movies with fire in them and everybody's just in the bit like Backdraft, walking around
Yep.
the interior of the building with no masks on, just breathing in the smoke. There is no smoke and they can
Yeah.
see everything, which is totally not reality.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we got to do the stuff that's going to give them the best advantage out on the ice. And if that's a bird dog, which is more like a prehabby, rehabby, get on all fours, lift one arm out, lift, press one leg back, right? If that's the right move, if a side plank is the right move, then that's the right move. It doesn't matter if they're $1 million athlete, if that's going to be the thing they need. And uh, you know, if we're smoking these athletes where they get on the ice for a game and coach is like, what's wrong with you? It's like, oh, it was leg day yesterday and the coaches crushed me, and I can barely skate. I mean,
Right.
then we're going to lose our jobs because we're not the show. The show's on the ice. And so we just need to be there to support them, not to try to be ego where it's like train hard, leave it all on the floor, on the in the gym. It's doing stuff that are going to challenge their, help improve their stability, help improve their mobility, all that. And also, honestly, the big thing too was uh, when we started the season, the projections for our team were very high. And going to the playoffs, hopefully making a run. We had Solani, we had Getzlaff, we had Corey Perry, we had all these top players on our team, Bobby Ryan. There was a lot of great players, and we had a lot of young players that were rookies in our camp that came up that are now Devontae Smith Pelly, Patrick Maroon. Like they were all there. They were their first year, and they both have, I think, won Stanley Cups. So we thought, wow, this is going to be amazing. Our season was trash. Our season was
Wow.
horrible. We lost our head coach halfway through the season. We thought, okay, this are we going to lose our jobs too when the new coach comes in? And I was really felt very fortunate to go through that experience of a not just a losing season. It's not like we were a team that, you just show up day one expecting like, well, hopefully we win 50% of our games. Like hope. But to have that kind of experience because we would train after they would get off the ice and after a game because it was a short turnaround for the next game. So it was like, okay, you get done, you get off the ice after a game, come in, start training, and we would take them through their sessions in the weight room. And when you win, everything's awesome. I mean, players are coming in, we're all high fiving each other, we're all super excited. When you're losing, I still have to coach. They still
Yeah.
have to do the training exercises, right? But now they're frustrated because it's a losing season. They lost a game. So I had to figure out how do I how do I work with them? How do I coach them through this when nothing feels like it's going right for them? And that was a better experience than if it was just all high fives and fist bumps and spraying champagne and stuff after games. So it was a very very fortunate experience. It would have been great
So
to go to the cup, but
so you learned to kind of tune it in. You had to dial it into the correct formula, kind of titrate it, in the medical world to
hmm
get the most out of the athlete without taking them to that point of injury, which definitely I can see going into any kind of other sports, athleticism, fitness training for disc golf or anything else. And I want to talk real quick because this reminds me of this kind of theory I have within the fire department. The popularity, especially with uh, police and fire and military, with workouts that are sort of like CrossFit workouts, and no disrespect to CrossFit, it's obviously effective. We've seen the people, we've seen the results. Um, but what happens is because that has become part of the culture of first responders. When you want to get somebody involved in fitness who's never been involved in fitness and they think that that is the only way to use weights or to use the equipment that the fire stations are being equipped with, they say, hell no, I'm not going to do that to my body to the point of vomiting. Because like when you're saying for a hockey team, they got to be ready to go play the game tomorrow. For us, in the middle of the workout, the tones can drop and you've got to go do what you got to do. You got to go fight that
yep,
fire. So you can't have all that, lactic acid buildup or, just vomiting before you even put your mask on because you've been working
yep,
out. So what do? They just say, I'm not going to work out. I'm not going to do that because
yep.
nobody's ever shared kind of a titrated workout that works for, different people, different situations and beginners.
100%, Pat. 100%. And that's really a big part of my philosophy is, good, better, best, show up, do what you can, start where you are. And like I'm very fortunate from my experience with in hockey. I was very fortunate to be introduced to and have acquaintances that are very high level coaches, both still in the NHL and in other fields that train other types of athletes and stuff, and have had them as some of my mentors. And I'm very fortunate for that. And with that, um, most of them don't have Instagram accounts. Most of them don't have social media because the stuff that they do is not it's not it's not going to get you 1,000 likes on Instagram. It's not going to
Right.
get you a lot of praise, right? But it's to help them. And one of them, one of my mentors, Dan John. And if you've never heard of Dan John, definitely check him out. He's got amazing books that I think, Pat, that you would really enjoy, and others. And he's helped me out. I've learned so much from Dan, and he's been in the coaching world. He's a legendary coach. He's been in like over 40 years, I think, and he coaches Olympians. He coaches high level athletes in Highland Games and all this. And he also
Wow.
coaches special operators. He's gone in where where um, where we don't even know that these types of teams exist. in the military. He's been brought in to work with them. And one thing he says is that the thing with fitness is that everybody there's this myth out there. There's this belief that in order for you to, you have to engage in battlefield tactics almost just to go out to your mailbox and back without pain. And that's not true.
Mm,
He goes and works with these teams that no one knows, they exist, and they're doing they're doing glute bridges, they're doing breath work, they're doing stuff like that, because at
right.
that highest level, that's the stuff that really matters. And if that, just like you with the fire department, and the police, it's like you said, if tones drop, you got to go. And if these teams, they get a call, it's like, hey, you got to be on a plane in 30 minutes and you're going somewhere. And it's like, oh, but leg day was yesterday, and
Hmm.
my joints are aching from yesterday's session, like that's not performance. That's
Right.
not perform. That's yeah.
And you've got to be ready to go in the middle of a set. So
Yes.
the old me, I used to push, 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 and say the only way that I'm going to get better is to push beyond, you know, the limits that I mean, ever been comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
But this past year, I started having some heart problems, and it was not related to the fitness stuff, and I had to kind of stop. I had to. I was having SVT, supraventricular tachycardia,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
just out of nowhere. It began one day when we were doing some training. My heart rate got up to 160 and didn't go down for 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So that is almost a shockable rhythm for
Yeah.
cardioversion for those people
Yeah,
out there.
absolutely.
I mean, it is. But I didn't go to the ER at that time. About a week later, I had another run of SVT, and I did end up going. But at before that time, I was doing a lot of lifting and kind of going by that mentality of push, 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 push. When I came back, I started doing strong lift 5x5s. You're probably
Mm-hmm.
familiar
Mm-hmm.
with that.
Yep,
I've
absolutely.
really enjoyed that. But when you first start the program, let's say I was benching 215 or whatever before the heart problems I had. When I came back, it's like, all right, get on the bench, you're benching 145 on day one. And
Mm-hmm.
you're like, I'm not even doing anything at this point. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Or you're squatting like 135. You got 245-pound plates on the side, and that's it. And you're like, I'm barely doing anything, but it's moving it up at such an increment that it your body is building, but you're not having to kill yourself to do it. And so I tell the guys at the fire station, I come in and they say, well, how was that workout? It was heavy, but I'm not dead. In the middle of any set, I could have put the weights down and go and ran a call. So
Yep.
yeah, I totally have seen both worlds of trying to kill yourself. And a lot of people think of fitness that way. That's why a lot of people who've never done anything fitness related, disc golfers or non-disc golfers, have such a hard time starting. I love it the way you said it. Start where you are. That's just,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the same thing with any skill that you use. Start where you
Mm-hmm.
are. When you're just learning to play disc golf, you're not going to go out there and throw aces. You're not going to go out there and throw birdies. Start
Yep.
where you are and just keep trucking. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's how I approach it with both with my, the pros that I work with, and the AMs that I work with. And I tell my pros, it's like you have to earn complexity, you have to earn intensity, you have to earn progression. I go and I start with them, and it's like, hey, we're getting on the ground and we're doing stability work, we're doing mobility work, we're doing breath work. And they're like, oh, but I saw this Instagram post of this professional athlete one time. I'm like, that's an Instagram post that was put out there to get excitement. But if they're working with a very good coach, that's only a very small percentage of what they do, and they've earned that intensity, they've earned that complexity. And that's important, because I'm not there to try to impress my athletes and get them injured. If I'm working with Ricky, and people will say they'll see me doing a video of something of Ricky doing an exercise, and Ricky's really bought in, and Eagles really bought in, and some of these athletes Paige really bought in to this kind of training that we've done with them. And they people on Instagram be like, oh, they need to train more alpha. I'm like, you know Ricky's the number one rated player in the world. If I sit there and try to do like, hey, let's do this crazy exercise, because I just want to, my ego as a coach, I want to show you that you can do it. And he gets injured. That's not helping anybody. Like,
Right.
that's like, it's do no harm. It's do the most effective thing, even if it's like the thing that seems the most ineffective, but it's the most effective thing. And that's important. And like you said, Pat, there's so many people that they don't enter fitness, they don't work on their health, because the fitness industry is really broken. It's broken because there's so much information out there, there's so much content out there, but most of it is sold as like, okay, entry level in the fitness, you just want to move better and you want to feel better. Do this hardcore 5 day a week program that's going to
Right.
make you throw up, and you need to have all sorts of equipment and this and that. It's like, that's not accessible for people. And so that's where my training programs, even with my AMs, it's all like starting out with breath work and mobility, and planning, like, set your environment up for success. Just look around. What are some of the roadblocks that are keeping you from doing a 5 minute action every day, something just every day, and then just build up over time. And that's really that's the most important thing starting out, is knowing that intensity, effort does not equal effectiveness. High effort does not necessarily mean high effectiveness, right?
Absolutely.
It just means more effort. Like, harder work is just harder work. It's not better work necessarily.
Yeah.
It's just hard. It's like, do more. Well, that's just more. That doesn't mean that that's what I should be doing. It's just telling me to do more.
Well, there's a lot of truth to that old adage, work smarter, not harder. And that
Mm-hmm.
that even works in the fitness realm.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always heard, and I may not get the phrase correct, but use the smallest prescription that does the most work on you. So 20%, I'm a big fan of the 80-20 principle. So it's
Absolutely.
20% of what you do gets 80% of the results.
I love it. I love it. I'm a huge advocate and fan of the Pareto, the 80-20 as well. And I think it's a great way to live your life, in so many realms. And so we're right on board together with that, Pat, that 80-20. And really, we call it also minimum effective dose on
That's
that,
what that was the word I was looking for.
Yep. So I tell people, in some of our training programs, they're called meds. And it's just like, when everything else is hectic, just take some meds, minimum effective dose, get in, do something, get out, and you're going to be better for it, because the brain doesn't go, wait a minute, was that just 5 minutes of exercise? Well, I'm going to actually make you worse now. That
Right.
was ineffective. No, the brain's like, wow, that was one set of shoulder taps, one set of, split squats. Fantastic. We got our hips a little more stable. We got our shoulders a little more stable. We engaged our core a little bit. You know, the brain craves that. It doesn't necessarily need to be hard. Now, you can go there if you earn it, but
Right.
entry point in, so many people, but such a high injury rate in our sport.
But that
If you
is
just
that
start
is the
doing a little thing.
barrier for people to start of any type of person to start a fitness program, because
Mm-hmm.
like you said, the information from the fitness world is go 0 to 75 instead of
Yep.
0 to 1. Just go for a walk. Bend over,
Exactly.
try it, can't touch your toes, touch your thighs, touch your knees. Start where you are.
Absolutely.
And
Start where you are. Do what you can.
can't do one or can't do 10 push-ups, do one from your knees. Next day do two from your knees. And that is everything in life. Like I
Right.
when you're trying to learn anything, and I think I'm probably repeating myself, but with disc golf, you're just not going to get the scores that Eagle or the distance that Eagle or Ricky are going to get. It's just not going to happen. But you got to hammer. You got to keep hammering away, and eventually you're just going to keep getting better. You're not going to get worse.
Yep, absolutely. You're not going to get worse. Exactly, and you're going to be better for it. You're going to have less joint pain. You're going to have, better results. You're going to have a much healthier time, both mentally and physically, on your way, when you know that it's more about the journey than just focusing on the destination of where you want to go. And you just follow along that path, and take it one step at a time. And The thing with disc golf is I say this often, is the great thing about disc golf is you can play every day, and the worst thing about disc golf is you can play every day. We have such a high injury rate in disc golf. University of Arizona study a couple of years back, as a survey, showed, of 897 disc golfers, showed over 81% injury rate in our sport. And that's incredibly high rate. I get messages all the time, every week, from disc golfers. Hey, I started playing and now I can't pick my kid up. My shoulder hurts so bad. I'm having trouble with my knees. I'm gonna have to have, hip surgery, things like that. And that's not why we want to get into this sport,
Right.
but what the great thing is, we can play every day. The worst thing is we can play every day. So we need to step back and give ourselves that time to recover, but also know that, like, where we are in the sport, like where we are individually in the sport, and knowing that progress takes time, and it's progress. It takes, you need to go along that progression, like you said, with the strong list 5x5, right? You start out small and you work your way up. And a challenge with disc golf, not only the accessibility, but the we can there's a lot of people in disc golf that, they pick up a disc. They're like, oh, what is this? Oh, this is a disc, that's a basket. And within 6 months or less, they're typing into YouTube, like Eagle McMahon clinic on, forehanding 400 feet, the sidearm at 400 feet, and like, it's taken a long time for him to get there. He had
Hmm.
to earn that over years, right? Like, I always joke around. It's like, that'd be like me throwing a football with my daughters, and then, be like, hey, that's fun. And then it's like Tom Brady clinic on winning a Super Bowl. Like,
I love it. That's so
it's a
true.
right. And that people would think that's crazy. And it's like, I go to throw, I throw a baseball, and then I'm with some friends. It's like, hey, I started throwing a baseball the other week, and you know, I'm trying to see if Mariano Rivera can give me a clinic on throwing 100 miles per hour. Like, people would go, that's crazy. That's crazy. And so it's hard to say that. It's hard to tell disc golfers to take break. It's hard to tell disc golfers to not, excel as fast as you can. But I just feel like that's kind of where I should, is like, you don't want to tell disc golfers to play less disc golf, or to pull back the reins. But with as many injuries as I see in this sport, I feel like it's something I need to be saying.
Sure. And can you break down that percentage that you were just giving? You said 80, how many percent?
Yeah, yeah, it was over 81%.
And
Over
is that
81% of respondents.
over a period of time? Do you know what the time period is on that?
Uh, I'd have to look at the study again, and to get that, but it was a survey of 897. I think it was 897 disc golfers, and said that they had experienced, 81% had experienced an injury playing disc golf.
Okay, right on. And it's interesting. I talked to Vanessa Van Dyken just a few weeks
Hmm.
ago, and she ended up having a hand injury, which put her out
Hmm.
for surgery. And about a month ago, I talked to a player named Robin Vielman, and he had a knee injury. I think his was not from, it was from soccer, not related to disc golf. But what these both have in common, and this is what people probably don't see and understand, is that these pro disc golfers, if this is all they do, these injuries are taking so much money out of their pockets. If they can't
Oh,
play, they're not working. So that, I mean, that's a
yep.
big deal. It's not like me or like my buddy or anybody from my league. We're not playing, on Sunday. It's we're not working. And how
Yep.
long is it going to be, especially when you got to go have something big like knee surgery or hand surgery? So let's talk about injuries. What are some of the
Mhm.
most common injuries that we are seeing in disc golf?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, as a professional, I tell them your body's your business card. If you're not open for business because you're injured, you're not making money. And so it's very important to see that. So it's great to see the progression, over the years, from 2016 to now. I'm with the Pro Tour, partner with the Pro Tour, to have athletic performance zones on site at every Pro Tour event, to help the athletes warm up and cool down and think of that. And it's great to see more and more pros doing that, to lower their risk of injury. But injuries happen, and I'll go into those injuries, and why they happen. Is one thing is, we get into disc many of us get into disc golf when we find that we feel like it's a healthy thing to do, right? We're like, oh, I lost some weight, I'm being outdoors. Disc golf is not healthy. Disc golf is performance. Performance is performance, right? There are health benefits to performance, but when you're doing one thing one-sided repetitively over and over and over again for and pushing towards results, that's performance. And that's not to say don't do it. You know, and an Olympian that clean and jerks a very heavy barbell over their head, they win a gold medal, or they make it to the show. I mean, that's performance. That's not health. Most of them are injured, after doing it or at some time in the process. But that's the thing. There's performance in being a firefighter. There's performance in sitting at your desk for 8 hours a day. It's not healthy. It's not healthy to do that, right? So we need to do the healthy things so that we can do our performance things, better and longer. And when it comes to injuries, the most common injury in disc golf is the overuse injury. Now it may show up in the shoulder, may show up in the elbow, may show up in the knee or the hip, the lower back, the ankle, the foot, the neck, but that's the most common injury is the overuse injury. And that goes back to we're doing the same thing over and over again. And, we're putting a lot of volume on our body. If you ask a professional baseball pitcher to go throw a complete game every single day, 5 days a week, they'd be like, no, I'm not going to do that. And be like, why not? And be like, because I want to do this for a long time and I want to perform at my best every time I go out there. So they're on a 5 to 7 day rotation. They're not just going out and throwing hard because they can throw hard, but we go out there and we play all the time. And so we're never giving our body a break. We're never giving our body a break. We're putting a ton of volume, but we're also not. Many of us are not engaging the muscles and the stability and the mobility and everything that we need in order to go out there and throw all the time. So it's like if you play hard, recover harder. We talk about that in fitness, like in strength and conditioning. Like train hard, recover harder, because the stimulus is the resistance is the stimulus for growth, but where growth actually happens is during the recovery period. So if we're throwing every single day, we're putting that stress in the shoulder and the elbow and everything. It takes a beating. And, I hate to tell, like I said, as a disc golfer myself, I hate to say, dial it back if you can, but, I feel like as a coach, that's my responsibility to say, hey, we all want to play this game as long as we can. And so, finding ways to reduce our volume can actually improve our performance on the course, because we're not going out there just exhausted. You talk about bench press. If you went bench pressed every single day,
High
like even if you
volume.
bench press 5 days a week, right? Even if it was just the bar, you just did the bar 5 days a week, 100 reps, your shoulders would be talking to you, your elbows would be
Right.
talking to you. You go, but it's just the bar. Gosh, I can do 250, I can do 300. It's like, okay, but you're doing it all the time. And so if we want to be healthier and we want to perform at our best every time we're out there, sometimes it's pulling it back. So we see shoulder issues, we see elbow issues, we see wrist and lower back and hip issues. They're all pretty common. It just shows up, in different ways in different people. So yeah, that's kind of it. And the elbow, if we just want to highlight one, the elbow for throwing sidearm, forehand, flick, wherever you're in the country, the world, or whatever you call it, the Eric Oakley says they call it down in Pensacola or Alabama. They call it something else. They don't. Do you know what other
I've
word
heard
there
it
is?
before. There's probably like 100 names for the forehand shot, the flick shot.
Yeah, I can't think of.
There's a
There's another
website on
name.
the internet, I think, that tried to start recording all of the different names. I wish I could tell you offhand.
Yeah, I hear you. But let's just go with the elbow. The elbow is serious. We know Simon is out right now with the elbow injury, right?
Right.
And so we're trying to work on that. I connected him up with probably the best place in the world for him to be at. That they rehab Major League Baseball arms all the time there. So he just happens to live 45 minutes away from it, which is really great. So that's where he's at. But the elbow, because our elbows are not designed to do what we do in the disc golf in the sidearm throw. It's
from
not
like a
designed.
kinesthesiology, that's the right term, right?
Well, there's like kinematics,
Ki-
kinetics,
Kinetic
biomechanics. Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
standpoint.
yeah. So if we think about when we throw a sidearm, we are pitching. This is me pitching. If for those that are just listening, I'm got doing the pitching motion. This is me throwing a sidearm. I'm just bending over, right?
Right.
So we're pitching, right? We're
Right.
essentially pitching. My elbow joint likes to flex and extend. So for those listening only, it's like I'm doing a bicep curl. I'm flexing my elbow, okay, and I'm extending my arm, okay, at the elbow. It likes to do that. That's what it does really well. What it doesn't like to do is bend, like
The,
flex side to
the
side.
side to side movement. Okay.
Yes. Okay. So when my elbow is going out in front of me, that puts what we call a valgus stress on that elbow joint. Okay. So it wants to pop out. So all the tissues around your elbow have to engage to keep that elbow joint, the integrity of that elbow joint. So it's trying, the forces are trying to separate that elbow joint, and the tissues and the capsule and everything is hanging on for dear life, trying to keep that from happening. Okay. And so we see in a lot of youth and a lot of players, you've heard Tommy John surgery. That is where they go in, they have to repair the elbow, the tissues around the elbow joint there. So an example of this would be, and I tell people, give people this example is, for those anyone who's listening, if you're not a fitness expert, you know nothing about fitness, you're going to be able to answer this question. Is, I say, if you saw somebody jumping up and down, and every time they land, they let their knees knock together, so their feet were underneath their hips, but their knees were going in
And
and coming together. Anybody, my 10-year-old, my 11-year-old daughter would be like, that doesn't look healthy for the knees.
right.
Like that doesn't look right. That's a valgus stress on the knee. So it's the
Right.
same stress because the knees like to hinge, they don't like to go in and out. And so that valgus stress is very impactful on the knee. And that's what we do on the elbow. So I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying that there needs to be progression and strength and all that, and volume, pitch count. I have my pros. I say you got to watch your pitch count. You got to think about how many throws you're doing, because one, you got to get strong, but two, you got to strengthen those tissues, and you got to watch that volume, because again, going to that pitcher, um, a professional pitcher would not go out and throw hard every day, and they've been doing it since they were 10. They've been doing it since they were
Right.
12, so they learned their way up there. But you know, we and the ones that throw the hardest, because everyone wants to throw as far as Eagle McMahon, like every sidearm, right? It's like, okay, I think I got this, and we go out and we throw it as hard as we can. But in baseball, professional baseball, the ones that are really throwing the hardest, they're the closers. And it's like 10 pitches in, and the coaches are like, we got to get this guy out of here. Like he's already
Wow.
thrown 10 pitches already, like,
Yeah.
so, but in disc golf, it's like, hey, let me just pull it out and throw whenever.
So if you're using this elbow as a fulcrum moving side by side, and then all of
Mm-hmm.
the force is way down at the tips of your fingers, I'm sure if we did some physics equations, we'd all be really impressed by the amount of exponential force that's been placed over the entire arm all on that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then once so typically, like you said, you're like a pitcher, and then you bend over to throw your flick shot. But some people will do this number where it's way out, and they don't even, now the fulcrum becomes the shoulder. And that
Mm-hmm.
probably causes a lot of shoulder injuries from that same throw, because now
Mm-hmm.
we got even doubled the force back here.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And we still have the stress on the elbow. It's a the elbow is still the hand in that layback position, and it's laid back and it's dragging. So there's still stress even with our arms straight, right? But it's a little less, the joint's a little more, is in a different position. The elbow joint's a different position. So yeah, you'll get a lot more stress on the shoulder but you still get that on the elbow. And the thing is, there's so many injuries on this. I had one guy message me one time, and he's like, this was like a year, 2 years ago or something. And he's like, hey, I think this was like in December or something. And he said, hey, I last played disc golf on the 4th of July, and my elbow hurts so bad I can't pour a cup of coffee, can't open a
Mm,
door. I'm gonna probably have to have surgery. I can't play with my kids. And he said the worst thing about it is not it's not the lack of disc golf that's hurting me the most. And this is also a big part of my holistic of why I want to do this and talk about all this kind of stuff. And I think it ties into Zen disc golf as well. And what you do is throwing a disc is important. It's something we love about disc golf. But what do we all actually start to really love about disc golf more? The community. All
community.
of our friends are disc golfers, being out there, being on the course, letting go of the stress of work and life, still feeling active and competitive beyond our high school and college athletics, blowing off that steam, getting in that meditative state. So if we can't play disc golf because of an injury, the injury sucks. But just going out there and saying what's up to your friends and maybe carrying the bag for your buddy, like that's even worse,
Right.
because you're like, how long can you do that? So it pulls us away from everything else that we love about disc golf when we have an injury. And that was the most impactful thing for him is like, I'm not around my friends anymore. Like I hate just showing up to the course and be like, hey, have a great round, guys. You know?
Yeah. You lose that dopamine release
Mm-hmm.
from all those different multiple channels you just mentioned. All of those is a dopamine release. And if something's keeping you from being out there, like we talked about with the pros, it's taking money out of the pocket. Well, it's taking joy out of your life if this is something that you're really passionate about. So, man, I totally, the longevity is definitely a key word for this sport for many of us. You mentioned a couple different things I want to pick up on before I forget. And one of them was real quick. I really liked your point on depletion. So any activity that we do, I kind of started envisioning it sort of like a cell phone battery.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of us may not think about, disc golf being that depleting um, when we're not actually doing it. When we're
Yeah.
sitting here and we're watching other people do it. But I tell you, if you go and you play 18 and you're not a little bit more tired than when you started, then you have depleted something. Do that every single day and that battery's going to wear down. When that battery wears down, the technique goes away. So you're not only throwing as far as you were or making the putts that you were, but you're starting to lose um, the ability to safely
Mm-hmm.
throw effectively, and you're increasing your chances of having that injury. I really like that as the battery goes down over time, whether that's one day for you. Like I remember one day, a buddy of mine and I said, let's go see how many holes we can throw in one day. We're going to break our record. It was something like 116 holes we ended up playing. It was ridiculous. But the next day I can't move my arm. Well, then obviously you're doing something that's depleting your body over that period of time. And if you continue to do that past your comfort level, you are going to hurt yourself. It's not going to be sore, it's going to be injured. And
Yes.
that's a good let's put a pin in that because I think that's an important thing to talk about, the difference between soreness and injuries, because a lot of people have a problem with that. I learned that in Fire Academy because people would come up
Mm-hmm.
and be like, "Oh, Lieutenant, I got this thing. Are you sore or are you injured?" So let's put a pin in that. But the other thing I wanted to talk to you about it being a one-sided sport. This is something
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of people miss and don't really realize, even players. And when I say that, I think it's the same thing when you say it. Most of us are dominant, either left hand or right
Mm-hmm.
hand,
Mm-hmm.
and we're constantly doing this motion. And in order to balance out the body, we would have to do this motion with the opposite side of our body an equal
Mm-hmm.
amount of times. That's not going to happen because most of us are not ambidextrous players. So,
Mm-hmm.
how can we as disc golfers balance our bodies out if that's the nature
Yeah,
of the sport.
yeah, absolutely. And to hit on your earlier point that you just made of the really quick to touch on that, the depletion, um, and our brain, like on the outside, it's technique, but on the inside, it's movement patterns, it's compensation patterns. It's the brain trying to figure out to what strategies, what muscles to engage, how much to engage them, what joints to stabilize, what joint to mobilize. It's all a movement. It's a movement strategies as we do it, right? And so as we fatigue, our brain has to come up with new movement strategies to continue to do the same thing. If I came and I squeezed your hand, Pat, really hard, um, I would most likely, like in the very beginning, it would be mostly my grip, the muscles in my forearm, in my hand, like everything would be gripping there. But if I want to maintain that level of tension, eventually, like those muscles are going to fatigue. Oh yeah, exactly. My shoulder is going to be engaged. Eventually, like I'm squeezing my right hand, so squeezing your hand, but it's like my left foot, my left calf is engaged because the
Hmm.
body's trying to maintain that same level of strength and stability. But as things fatigue, it has to figure out new movement patterns. So you watch in baseball, you watch a pitcher 80, the muscle strategies, the movement strategies that they're using, that their brain is using to throw that first pitch is a lot different than that 80th pitch. It's a lot different than that 50th pitch, right? And you start to see those decrements through the game where there's just like, oh, that pitcher's got to get out of there. They can't find the strikes because the body's trying to use strategies that are completely different than what they practice when they're fresh,
Which
right?
leads to
That's
compensation.
exactly. That's why I'm not a huge advocate of like, say, go out and throw 500 putts because your 500th putt, your 100, your 200th putt, that's a different movement strategy that your body's trying to do versus when you go on the course and around and you're fresh. You've done a bunch of reps in a depleted state, but that's not how you want to perform, so you need to touch into that depletion so that your body knows how to, but not an empty gas tank, right? And so disc golf on the outside looks so silky and smooth when it's really looking good and it's feeling good, right? But there's still a lot of violent stuff going on under the hood, right? That's like looking at a Bentley driving down the street and you're like, wow, that's pretty. There's obviously nothing violent going on underneath that hood. There is, but it's better maintained. It's well, thought out. It's put together. So the more we maintain ourselves, we'll be able to fight through that depletion. Our the rate of depreciation is going to be less. Like we're gonna be with our fitness. So we do things to increase our ability to maintain that same level of tension. That's where you get stronger and you can do more because you've trained the body to do that. But a lot of us, we just go out and throw and throw and throw, and we don't actually. We're actually training. We're actually throwing with worse reps with different movement strategies, and that's not a good thing, right? Um, so to go to your point, or your question about what to do to balance out the one-sided thing, really we don't necessarily like have to go and do the same amount of reps on the other side. It sounds that very intuitive to do that, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but just going and working on stability of the shoulders, stability of the hips, core stability, core strength, all that, and just knowing that one-sided sport is it's performance. It's performance. So we do healthy stuff to try to do more performance. In hockey, they're hunched over. There's no amount of training we can do to like get them straight, but we try to do some posture stuff because we know that they spend so much time hunched over, right? And in that flexed forward position on the ice. So we just try to do some things like planks, and we're doing bird dogs, and we're doing farmers carries, and we're doing things that put them in a straight and challenge them in a straight position, not necessarily going out and swinging, and doing movements that are counter to what they're doing on the ice. So that's not bad, going out and using throwing. I like to use a badminton racket. I don't know if, for anyone that watched, if anyone's watching the stories from Las Vegas Challenge, I don't know when this podcast will come out, but if you look back, you'll see some of my stories on some of my social media where I have athletes like Paige and Eagle and all of them really using a badminton racket to warm up the rotational pattern before they get out there. So it's part of the warm up sequence. So taking a badminton racket, putting in your other hand, and doing some swings there is not a bad thing to kind of just get your body rotating in that other direction for sure. It's a good thing.
Fantastic. You probably do like something with a towel as well. Just anything that gets you
Yes,
opposite
you
side.
can use a towel. I'm not against a towel. I like the badminton racket better, but I'm not against a towel. If that's all you have, absolutely, that is perfectly okay. We found that just we really like using badminton racket, but you can definitely, if that's all you got, use a towel for sure.
Right on. So let's talk about the soreness versus injury, because a lot of people can't
Mm-hmm.
decipher what the difference is.
Yeah, yeah. There's going to be obvious things where you're like, okay, that doesn't feel right, and that is something that um, you should not fight through. And then, like you said, there's going to be those things where you can't decipher, and it's really it, some ways to determine that. And now each person's going to have their own pain threshold and stuff like that. You get old military guys, men and women and firefighters and police, where it's like some of them, they're hardened where they just fight through anything. And they're like, oh, it's nothing, it's a scratch. It's like, no, you're bleeding all over the place, right? So you're gonna have some people like that, but really, if it doesn't go away, if it doesn't start getting better, and if it's like if your legs are sore and you're like, okay, I'm walking and my legs feel sore like every time I get up and walk, like that's soreness. But if you're like, um, you know, it's not getting better and it feels like it's getting more irritated when I do it, then that's probably something that is leaning more into a painful something, some sort of injury, or you're on your way there, something like that. Muscles are going to definitely get more sore, but if you're feeling it in your pec after you just threw a bunch, you're feeling it in your shoulder. Um, it's probably, there's a good chance that it's soreness unless you feel something like pop. Oh, wait, no, that wasn't good, right? Or you felt like a very quick stretch or something. That's going to be more painful. But if you wake up and you're like, man, my shoulder hurts because I threw yesterday, I wouldn't necessarily just write it off as soreness. I would write it off as, okay, I've got to start strengthening those muscles so that, I'm increasing the buffer zone between me and injury. I'm strengthening those tissues so that I can put more stress on them, and I'm getting closer to an injury if I don't do something about it.
So would you say, maybe if we were to break it down to maybe three different things, I'd say timing, um, acuteness, like of the situation, and then is it generalized or is it pinpoint? So what I mean by those three
Mm-hmm.
things are timing. Um, if you're on the course and you throw and it immediately starts to hurt, it's could be a little bit more of an injury than a soreness versus when you wake up with it. That doesn't mean when you wake up
Mm-hmm.
with it that it's not an injury. I'm just saying we
Mm-hmm.
can kind of lead in that direction.
Yep, absolutely.
Then like a is it sore, or is it injured, pinpoint, or generalized? So generalized in
Absolutely.
an area of the body is probably soreness.
Yep.
Pinpoint
Love it.
if it's hurts in one place. And then the other
Mm-hmm.
one I think I said was like situational, like if you can actually think back to the snap or the thing, that's probably more of an injury.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Pat, on all those three. That's a fantastic way to frame it there and to think about it. Yes. Yep. And know that sometimes, as a strength coach, I um, try to look at not necessarily where the injury is, but what the potential root cause of it is. Meaning there's pain site and there's pain source, and those are not necessarily the same thing, right?
Right.
So if somebody comes to me and they have a knee issue going on, I look at their hip, I look at their core, I look at their ankle and foot, and they go, but it's my knee. I said, the knee is just a torque converter for whatever goes on at the hip and the ankle, hip and, above and below. So we work on hip stability, and then the knee feels great. I did that with an athlete this weekend at the Las Vegas Challenge. He's like, man, my knee's killing me right now. Like it hurts, it hurts, it hurts. I said, okay, get down half kneeling. Okay, I pushed on his knee where I pushed it sideways, said, don't let me push your knee in. So he had to really activate his hip. I put my hand on the inside of his knee, said, don't let me push you out. Get those hips firing, got the core work engaged, had him do some breath work through it. He came back the next day. He's like, dude, my knee felt amazing. Like my knee felt perfect the whole round yesterday. So if we feel something, then we think, okay, we got to look what else could be happening. So for everyone who's listening, if you feel like your shoulder or you feel your knee or something, it's not necessarily just your shoulder. It's not necessarily just your knee. We got to look at other places, and also that it's probably most of the time it's not about what just happened right there in the moment. Most injuries are they happen acutely, but they happen because of chronic
Right.
issues, right? The thing slowly
Camel
builds up.
or
You're on.
the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yes, just things are you're not recovering enough, you're overworking it, but you don't realize it, you don't feel anything, and then one day you go to throw a forehand and the pec goes, I'm done.
Mm.
And you go, what did I just do right there in my technique? It wasn't right there in the technique. It was that pec was probably hanging on for a little while and saying, like I need to get stronger, I need to get, this and that, and now it finally said, there we go. So if you get a medical diagnosis, it's very important to go get a medical diagnosis when you have something, but also know that a medical diagnosis is different than a movement diagnosis. So a medical doctor will say, we need to ingest, incise, ice, those kind of things where, and those are important, but many times we got to look at the movement diagnosis. Like, what are we actually doing that caused that injury? Like, you have shoulder pain. Okay, well, I need to get a cortisone shot. Well, maybe like that can probably help. I mean, if a doctor tells you do it and you want to do it, I mean, lower the inflammation and the pain modulation right there. But it's probably a movement thing that's causing it. So we need to look at the movement of your body that's actually putting the stress on the shoulder and work on that. Because if not, if we don't do that, a lot of people, they'll ice and they'll ingest, they'll take ibuprofen, or some sort of NSAID. They'll get a cortisone shot, and then they'll just go out there and keep doing it.
Hmm.
And we have that joke. You may have heard this joke, being in the field that you're in, where it's like, guy walks into the doctor's office hitting his thumb with a hammer, and he says, "Doc, what's going on? My thumb is just killing me. Can you give me some medication? Do you think, should I ice it? This and that. I just don't understand it." Doc said, "The first thing, stop hitting your thumb with a hammer. Like,
Hmm.
that's the first thing we need to do, and then
It
everything
hurts
else."
when
So
I
a lot
do
of
this.
people,
Stop doing it.
yeah. So people will get a cortisone shot, and they'll be like, "Okay, that's my ticket to play." It's like, well, we got to still do the others. We got to figure out why that's happening. And a big thing with that, Pat, is um, something I talk about here at Disc Golf Strong is that um, I'm a believer in technique. You need technique. You need to be improving your technique. And there's drills, and that's all important. But if we take a pyramid of performance, the skill technique is at the very top of that pyramid, right? The
Mhm.
bottom of that pyramid is foundational movement patterns, mobility, stability, body awareness and control, things like that. And a problem, something that I see in disc golf is someone has pain, someone is not getting the results they want on the course, and they go, okay, I need to look at my technique. Let me look up clinics. Let me look up what is this athlete talking about here, or that athlete talking about there. But what we're trying to do in most cases is we're trying to apply a technique solution to a movement problem.
Mm. Right.
So it's like, okay, I'm not, it hurts when I reach back, or I'm not getting the reach back that I want. So what are the 50 different drills that I can try to get more reach back. It's like, no, we need to work on improving the rotational mobility of your upper back because your spine's locked up because you probably sit at a computer all day, or you're out driving for a living, or you're on your phone all the time. So your spine can't rotate very well in your upper back. So we can do skill drill after skill drill after skill drill, but until we work on the movement problem of locked up upper back, thoracic spine, those skills, those drills are not going to unlock the performance that we want. So we work on applying a movement solution to a movement problem, and then we go back and add in the technique later. And that's something in disc golf where everyone wants to get better and they just look at technique, but they're not fixing the movement problem. And you look at other sports, baseball, all of them, they have a long history. When you're in the major leagues and you're in collegiate, you're in high school baseball, you've already got a couple of years in a gym with a strength coach taking you through the different movement patterns and things like that. Where in disc golf we don't have that. It's kind of just like grab my bag and throw, baby.
That is a really good point. That is a really good point. When you start seeing professional athletes from any discipline, hockey, baseball, basketball, they've been doing it since they were children.
Mm-hmm.
Most people getting into disc golf are jumping into it at 25, 35,
Yep.
and the foundations still have to be built before the technique. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very important. And the reason like I said, I'll say it again. It's tough as a disc golfer to tell, the disc golf community at large of like, hey, let's bring down our volume a little bit. Let's work on other things that are going to improve our performance and improve our longevity. But really, like, I've had people say, well, I don't want to, I don't need to train my body because I don't necessarily need to throw farther. I'm like, well, you want to throw longer, right? Like as in years. Like you want to,
Exactly.
you want to play this forever, and you don't want your favorite hobby, your favorite pastime, to be the thing that limits you from all other areas of your life. Because now you're fighting through a shoulder injury, and you got to call off work and stuff because you went out there trying to throw as hard as you can 5 days a week.
Yeah. And Seth, what I like about what I'm hearing and what you do is you're seeing the body as one complete organism,
Mm,
and you are applying a balanced approach to to create the effective movements, the longevity of the player. And it's in the way that you're describing it to me by you're saying, okay, we incorporate the strength training, the flexibility, the mobility, all of these things are very important. But when you start breaking it down to referred pain and having an understanding of maybe it's not the knee that's hurt, it's the hip or whatever. We are a complete organism, mind and body. And so I
hmm
don't know, there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score,
Love
where
it.
yeah, so basically even the things in our mind manifest through our physical being and our well-being. But, as you were talking about the knee and the hip, I got to thinking about, I have a lot of lower back pain. And one of the reasons I have a lot of lower back pain is because I have stiff calves.
Mm,
It's all related. And a lot of people
hmm
don't see that, just stretching your calves will, help with your back because it all folds into one complete organism, mind, body,
Yep.
spirit, whatever. And I love that you've brought this to the sport and you're trying to increase the longevity of some of these fantastic players that we have out there. So
Yeah. Thank
kudos to
you.
you.
Thank you. It's a true honor and pleasure to be able to do that, to be in the coaching corner of many of these great athletes in our sport, and also the AM side of the sport. Working with them, and like you said, Pat, the brain has no idea what a calf is. The brain has no idea what a bicep is. We training back in the day was very you know isolated, all about isolation.
Mhm.
And a lot of the training routines that many people did, that I did when I was younger. I'll be 40 this year, and um I did all this, bodybuilding style routines when I was younger. But really, those routines came from people that all they knew, they didn't have the kinesiology, the science of exercise and all that, and human movement is very young. And so they didn't know, like, they didn't have biomechanic training. They didn't have, EMG studies or anything. All they knew is I just pick this thing up and I curl it a bunch of times. My biceps pop,
It's
they
bro
get
science.
huge. Yeah. So yeah. And,
Everything
and
was
then,
science from the gym, not from the
yeah,
university or
it's
the high or studies.
exactly, exactly. So then people started going to the gym and they're like, hey, I want to come and use this gym. Oh, that guy's jacked. What do you do? And they're like, oh, do this and curl this a bunch of times and do this a bunch of times and you're going to look jacked. So those became the first personal trainers, and those became the experts writing the training programs, and they were very effective for getting huge, but not necessarily for living a life of health and performance, because all of them also had a lot of injuries and things like that. And so I try to take the training and the holistic approach to train the body, but also saying that, going back to our very beginning, that it's like you don't have to crush yourself to do it. You don't have to invest 2 hours a day to do it. You don't have to train 8 days a week, 10 days a week to do it. It's like that. It's like, that's such a roadblock for people. And I tell people, tell athletes, like, we're going to have speed bumps. We just can't make them roadblocks. If they have become roadblocks, how do we turn those into a speed bump? I can't train 5 days a week. Can you train one day a week? Yes, let's start there. I can't do 2 hours of training. Can you do 30 minutes? Can you do 10 minutes? Yes, let's start there. And that's okay. That's okay. The body's going to like it. You're going to get some benefit. You're going to get benefits out of it, both physically and mentally. And like you said, Pat, the mental affects the physical affects the mental. I'm very, very open about from many years in the doing search and rescue in the Coast Guard and doing 911 on the ambulance. I had PTSD, and I'm very open about that, because the stigma of mental health is, and not only in the fire and police, EMS services, but also just in general. When I was going through a lot of my PTSD, my body was hurting. Like, my body was stiffer. I just didn't feel like I could move very well. I had to work on meditation. I had to work on mindfulness. I had to read books and Deepak Chopra it out, and 10%
Right.
happier and things like that. And that made me also move better, because if somebody's going on the course, like you talk about in your book, Zen in the Art of Disc Golf, if you're carrying on to the course all the stuff in your head that is going on, it's going to affect you. It's going to affect you physically and mentally. It's going to affect you out there on the course. And so, yeah, absolutely. So meditation, mindfulness, all that stuff is very, very important stuff I talk about a lot.
Sure, and absolutely, and I can identify with the PTSD thing as well. I was pretty open about that when I came back on the
Mm,
first podcast.
mm,
And one of the things that does to you, because there's still people out there who don't believe it's a real
mhm.
discipline, and even more people who don't believe that people outside of the military do get it,
Oh,
um,
yeah,
which is a whole nother topic.
yeah.
But it is a big deal in police and fire. And I've often told people, if you've been in the fire department, one that's at least somewhat busy, doesn't even have to be busy, but if you're taking 3, 4, 5 calls a day and you do that for 5 years, guaranteed, you probably have PTSD of some way, shape, or form.
Mm,
Um, and
absolutely.
and the way that that sort of manifests itself is within your nervous system mainly. That's
Mhm,
where it starts. So your nervous system is broken down into parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So your
mhm,
sympathetic is fight or flight. Your parasympathetic is feed or breed. And what ends up
mhm.
happening is you develop a nervous system that compensates so that your sympathetic nervous system is used way more than it should be. The two should
Mhm.
fight. A healthy person should have both. And that's
Yep.
where you start getting into, and I don't want to get too deep into like heart rate variability and things like that, but
Mhm, mhm.
they should fight on a daily basis. You should have this stimulus that's causing you to go into fight or flight, whether it's just thinking about getting my son on the bus. It doesn't even have
Mhm.
to be a huge stimulus, but then the relaxation. So it's the fight, the relaxation, the fight, the relaxation. And what ends up happening with people with post-traumatic stress disorder is they're not able to regulate, and the sympathetic nervous system is constantly winning the fight. And that's
Yes.
how you end up having runs of SVT.
Yes. Yes.
Where your blood pressure starts going up, your heart rate starts going up, um, you, you become moody. Just think of if your body believes, like you just said, it doesn't know the difference between a calf. It doesn't know what a calf is. Your body also does not know the difference between an actual threat and a perceived threat. It just knows
100%.
threat, fight, or flight, and that's it.
Yep.
If there's not that constant balance, it puts you in a position to get sick, to not, and I don't mean just mentally ill, I mean physically ill. Your body
Absolutely.
keeps the score, to get injured. And I'm telling you, when you're going out on the disc golf course and your pulse is 130 just walking up to your disc and you don't know why, you know,
Yep.
you say you're a runner, you're a bicyclist and you have decent cardio, but you're still sitting at 130 when you're walking up to the disc, it could be a nervous system issue.
Yeah, absolutely, Pat. Absolutely, and so many people have undiagnosed PTSD, even outside of the military and in the police and EMS in general. And like you said, and we could go probably forever on a different podcast about that. And I tell my brother-in-law is a firefighter, is a medic, and he's a young guy, and I'm like, hey, take care of your brain, take care of your, because we never talked about it when we would go and do things. And people, oh, but you need to be in the military. It's like, no, I mean, I showed up at Coast Guard Station, San Francisco, 18 years old. Within the first 2 days, I pulled my first bridge jumper out of the water. Not to go down into a dark area, but it's like, that doesn't mess with your brain, like that. But what we do, not even just in our field, your field and what I was when I was in your field, but for everybody, the big thing is a quote that I got from a Tim Ferriss book, is they tried to bury us, they didn't know we were seeds. And that's huge, because we pushed it down, whether during these COVID times, and people are under stress and they're at home and they're putting things down, and they're just bearing, and they're not talking to anybody about it, or they're not working through it. That's going to manifest. We don't know when, we don't know how, but it can, right? And I know that this is necessarily like the topics of this podcast, but just I think both of us would be in line with just sharing, in this community of like, take care of your mental health, even if you don't, do some breath work, journal, read some stuff, get Zen, like, in whatever way it works for you, in whatever way is most accessible and approachable in your way. But it makes a difference, because it will affect, like you say in your book, it will affect your performance. And I have more PVCs than the average person, and I feel my heart go, flutter all the time, and that's a lot from PTSD stuff. But like you said, it affects your physical. So if you're out there on the course and you're in pain and you're like, man, I just don't feel good, my performance isn't great, but you got a stressful home life, you got stressful work life, it's not just going and throwing discs isn't, it's a therapy, but there might be some other things that are going to help your performance, both on the course and off the course.
Yeah, we are one organism. It's
Yes.
we're not a a Voltron or a Power Ranger buildup, like where they all
Yeah.
kind of come together, separate parts come together to make this one big huge monster. It's all one thing.
Yep.
And a
Yep.
big point of that is, man, go to the doctor. A lot of people
Yep.
don't want to go to the doctor. Find yourself a good practitioner and go and talk about this stuff, because a lot of this, like, things could be referred from other areas. And for
Mm-hmm.
example, for me, um, I hate going to doctors, and that
Mm-hmm.
so I'm preaching something I did not do for a long time. But when I finally went there, I realized that every issue I had, whether it was SVT or PTSD or chest pains or any of the different things that I was having, were related to head trauma that was untreated.
Mm,
And when they started looking at MRIs and CAT scans from a vehicle accident that I had years ago, they said, I can't believe that you were never treated for
mm,
head trauma, which exasperates everything.
mhm,
And so a lot of people
mhm.
get hit on the head, whether you're a football player, you've been in a car accident, you've been hit in the head with a
Yep.
straight disc, you know, and you have that whole coup counter coup kind of thing with your brain. Anytime
Mhm.
you've endured some kind of head trauma, it's going to manifest in a whole lot of different ways too. So that's another thing for people to think of. I know we went down a whole rabbit hole
Yeah.
here, but go to the doctor because they're going to help you with some of this referred stuff. You may not be
Yes.
able to pinpoint exactly what's going on, and that was a lifesaver for me.
I think that's great. And yeah, you said, I don't think, to go down this whole path, but I think it's good because, the people listening to this, hopefully that, you can take something away from that and just, because we don't talk about that kind of stuff enough. We don't talk about the body keeps the score and how that will affect your game. If you go, oh, but I thought this was about disc golf. You want to get better at disc golf, take care of your mind. Take care of take think about that kind of stuff because that will make a difference. Um, you know, uh, yeah, and like you said, we get into that state and our brain doesn't really recognize what's a threat or not, if it's real or not. It's like you watch a scary movie and something pops out on the screen and we jump back. We know it's not going to affect us, but our brain still takes that as a real threat,
Mhm.
and so getting ourselves into threatful situations on the course where we feel a threat, to us it's just like, oh, whatever, there's like a bunch of people watching me try to make this putt, but honestly deep down maybe it's something where your brain is now, it's in a stress response
Oh, yeah.
and it's thinking like, I'm something's going on and it can affect you beyond just that putt. And
Yeah.
it sounds crazy, but as you and I who have gone through this kind of stuff,
And
with our
and
backgrounds, it
and the best players have learned how to either self-talk their way through it, or I don't know how. I'm sure it's different for different players, but how they're able to allow that sympathetic nervous system to kind of take over. Because like when you said, when you're getting ready to take that, edge of the circle one putt, and you got a bunch of people watching. I hope people start watching. I hope we get galleries again on the disc golf course. I
hmm
miss the galleries. Just
yep,
watching the players play in front of the galleries, but they're
yep,
still playing in front of each other. And like I said, the brain really doesn't know the difference between a stress, a threat and a non-threat. But anything that makes you kind of start to sweat or shake or anything, that's your parasympathetic nervous system taking over. So that self-talk or the meditation that you've these are all important things, because a lot of people say, I don't know, when I'm getting ready to throw in some, I'm good when I'm throwing alone, but as soon as I throw in somebody, I need to work on the mental side. I've even talked to
hmm
pros on this podcast who've said, I need to work on my mental side, because I'm out there and something bothers me, and whatever. So it affects everybody, but everybody has a different way of making allowing their body to fight back that sympathetic nervous response.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And and if we want to improve our performance in a tournament, from the mental side, one big thing too is, I talk with my players about this, is like, you have to find ways to increase your adversity off the outside of a tournament round, and then get through it. Like, work your way through that. But you need to start with adversity. A big thing with disc golf that's challenging is, with our sport, like if we look at team sports, one I'm gonna just say that one reason, just one of the puzzle pieces of Paul Macbeth is, and let's say Ricky Wysocki, he pitched in the Little League World Series, but let's say Paul spent, he was a really good baseball player, and in high school, and when you're in baseball, when you're in soccer, when you're in all that, all of your practices are under adversity. Because if you're just mailing it in out there in left field, the coach is going to say, hey, you hit the bench. This guy wants it more. Get
Mm,
out there. So all your practices are in adversity. When you go to a major league, when you go to spring training, those players, they every single practice, they're out there, and it's the ones that they're under stress because someone else there is ready to take that job that they have, right? Or they want that job that that other person's slacking off on. Golf, professional golf, you got Q school. You got to get through it. That's stressful. So you got to work really hard to get through Q school. So it's an individual sport, but it's Q school to make sure that you get your tour card. Where I've had pros where they're like, "Hey Seth, it's really tough because I feel amazing in my practice rounds, but then I go in my tournament round and I can't get it together. What's wrong?" I'm like, well, and I've had talks where I said, well, the one thing is I've watched your practice round and it's you and six other guys, and you guys are all just like having fun, throwing a bunch of different discs, making jokes. And then the next day it all counts. You're by yourself, you got to be in your own head, this and that. But you watch Paul, you watch Ricky, I've watched Sarah Hokum at other place where they go and they practice by themselves or in a very small group, and they're very intentional. And that's a totally different thing. So finding ways to have adversity, like I have one of my athletes who was feeling stress with the 30 seconds, and it's like, when I'm putting, I feel I've been called on it before because that 30 seconds, and that's really stressful. So I have him taking a timer just on his phone and setting it to beep every 30 seconds. I said, okay, it beeps. Right when it beeps, start your routine, putt. When the next beep, you start your routine, putt. So now you know that there's 30 seconds there, and you can feel, you can sense what
Right.
30 seconds feels like, right? And you can go through your full routine, and as long as you get that routine done, now you're putting that stress on yourself, that you're adding adversity to that. So ways that we can find adversity, whether it's visualization, where you step up on the tee, close your eyes, imagine that the Jomez is there and everything's ready to go and it's on you. Open your eyes, throw. Ways that we can increase that adversity in ourselves, because practice rounds and tournament rounds are completely different things. But that's not the way it is in other sports.
Yeah, and that's so interesting. You talk about time. Just to sit back and think about time under stress is different than time under not stress. It's like say with time flies when you're having fun or whatever, but really time flies when you are under a huge amount of stress as well. Because like if we want to take it back to the fire department kind of issue or an EMS, like we keep going back there because it's something that we can kind of correspond with. But
Yep.
I'm sure you had it where you showed up, they called you, you're there in 3 minutes and they're like, it took you a half hour to get here because they're under stress. So time is
Yep.
taking forever for them. And so it's hard that's an interesting thing, man.
Hmm.
When we get under stress, we're not able to accurately feel time. That's interesting.
Yeah. Absolutely. And with your profession, and in my profession before this, is we train under stress. Like I'd be on the Coast Guard boat and we'd be out there, and then just the officer or something, just all of a sudden we just be hanging out just on the boat cruising, and then all of a sudden a buoy gets thrown off, and he's like, "Man overboard," and he's screaming, and it's like, we got to go, and we got to, or it's like you're sitting there and you're doing your EMS training. It's like, this person's down,
Mhm.
go. And it's like, their heart rate's dropping, this, that, your medic training under stress, so that when you show up, you are comfortable. Like one thing I talk about in my training with in our performance capping thing is getting comfortable being uncomfortable, and knowing that you have to train yourself to be in those positions. So it's fine. It's a little more challenging for people to find that way to do that in disc golf, but there are ways to do it, of putting yourself in adversity and getting comfortable being uncomfortable. But the more that you're able to do that, and put yourself in those stressful situations, and get yourself out of it successfully, your brain remembers that, like, oh, there were stressful situations, I was able to get through it, and these are the strategies that I did. And also the planning, right? That's a big thing. The checklist, something I talk with my athletes about. I have a we have like um, pre-tournament checklist, field work planning guides. We have all that to go through.
Hmm.
What's your morning routine, what's your meals like, routine, what's your meals, tournament meals, all that stuff. So that takes stress off your brain, because so many of us as disc golfers, it's like we show up like, oh crap, I forgot my putter, or I forgot my mini, I don't have a towel today. Like, what am I going to eat in the morning? It's like, my stomach's killing me now halfway through the round because I had a breakfast burrito, because I never thought about what kind of stuff should I eat in the morning that's going to sustain me, but not, make me feel gross and upset my stomach and things like that. But it in your profession, and what we did is having checklists and having things that we think about beforehand, that improves our performance. When I worked on the ambulance, every single day I had to go through the ambulance and I had a list.
Check off.
Check
Yep.
the oxygen. Where's where's this? Where's that? All the stuff, right? Even if I'm working a 48-hour shift and I was the one that checked it yesterday and we went 0 for 0 on calls, right? And I know it's completely stacked and I know where everything is. I still went and did all that. Why? Because then when we show up, we just have to perform, right? We are
Absolutely.
priming ourselves for performance. You're checking the rig, your guys are checking the rig, the engineers checking the rig, the firefighters checking all their stuff. You're checking yourself as a lieutenant. So when you show up, you can perform. You don't got to be thinking, well, where's the hose? Oh my gosh, we forgot this. The ladders at the station. Like, you need to show up and just perform. And that's something, the more as disc golfers, we think about that ahead of time. And we use things like those checklists. What am I doing the night before? What is my stuff all in? All those routines and things are essential. So when you show up on a tournament round, you're like, boom, I'm ready to go. My body, my brain doesn't have to think about all the other things. It's just I can be in that mode.
Wow. You're in all these different, I love it.
we try to get it holistic. We try to get it
It's,
from all
it's,
different angles.
it's not just strength training. It's not just being strong. It's the full organism. I love it. Seth, we have probably just touched the tip of the iceberg. So I'm going to invite you on the show to come back again
Love it.
when you're able to, because I think
Love
we
it.
have so much more conversation that we could have.
Yeah, it was great. I really enjoyed talking to you, Pat.
Well, the feeling is mutual. Is there anything that you'd like to plug before I let you go?
Yeah. So first off, just again, thank you to you, Pat, and for having me on. It's a true honor. Again, and a pleasure to be here and speak with you, and also share, some things that I've thought about and I've done along the way that can hopefully help, all of your listeners, perform at their best and stay as healthy and resilient as possible. And so for all of you that are listening, hopefully you can just take something away, take a 5-minute action, do what you can, start where you are, know that, anything is good, right? Minimum effective dose, all those little things matter. And, we have our Instagram, we have our Facebook, we have a free group on Facebook called the Disc Golf Strong Fitness Community, where we share stuff. And on our YouTube channel, we share videos on there as well. And then again, our Instagram. And then if for those who want to learn a little bit more, we have a free ebook, warm up ebook, and we can talk about that next time. We talk as the importance of warming up. But if you want a free warm up ebook, the same foundational warm up that all the pros do on tour, you just go to discgolfstrong.com/disc golf athlete and just enter your email. We'll send you a free pre-round warm up ebook and some other resources you can start doing right away. And if you want to dive a little more, we have a performance academy, and we do that 3 times a year. It's a 7-week online course. We're just finishing up the last one this week. Last week of this one, and our next one starts in May. And to just learn more about that, it would be just discgolfstrong.com/performance, and it's a 7-week course. It's like $35. It's we try to keep it very affordable. So because our goal is just to help as many disc golfers as possible, play this game as much as they want and as healthy as they can.
Fantastic, Seth. What a great conversation. Like I said, I definitely want to
Likewise.
have you back on the show, because I think we have enough material for many shows, because I still have notes. I haven't even hit like half my notes of things I wanted to talk about, but we've been going for probably an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And I guess some of my people who have long commutes are finally getting to work. That used to be my commute back in the day. But
Well,
Other people are spreading this out through an entire week who only have to drive to
Uh,
work for like 15 minutes. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, definitely want to have you on the show and we can basically break it down into different topics if you'd be willing to, man.
Yeah, I would love that. We can touch, dive more into mental game and warm ups and field work. That's something I talk a lot about with my athletes. Like, don't just show up and just throw discs. Have an actual plan. Like, be intentional about it. There's so many things we can talk about, and it's just really been fantastic talking to you, Pat. So,
Guys, and this is the man who's helping coach Eagle, Paige, Ricky. Listen to this man. Thank you, sir.